Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly when I come across something that I read online, either through my Google News app or through another news article as well. This one, though, has to do with a very gruesome tale involving something that still happens out there in this world. And by strange coincidence, it was something that I was just talking about the other day in one of my other Cryptids and Monsters video. This is the one that I'm chronicling, the wonderful book, Strange Monsters and Great Searches. I had just finished chapter 5, which was titled An Unforgettable Serpent. And within that topic, within that chapter, it highlighted the notion of, yes, that people are eaten alive by giant serpents, giant anacondas, giant pythons. So no sooner did I do that story here than apparently this circumstance happened in Indonesia. In fact, you're looking at a picture of the actual python itself. So for this video, I'm going to go ahead and feature the information here. It's about the Indonesian woman who was eaten alive by a giant python. Horrible, absolutely horrible way to go. So let's go ahead and let's share this information here. I'll give my own thoughts and opinions on it. Let me know what you guys and gals think with regards to this. Is this truly one of the worst ways to go when it comes to somewhere out there in this world? So here's essentially what happened. So again, you have to go to Indonesia, specifically to a village that's called Kalimpong, and there this incident occurred near a local market there on June 6th. So it just happened this month, at least at the timeline associated with this video. The poor victim was a lady who went by the name of Farita. I don't know if that's her first name or her last name, but she was 50 years old at the time. She was there just doing her usual routines. In fact, apparently, according to some articles I was reading, she was walking through a woodland because she was going to go over again to that local market, this one being by her home, and then that way she could sell some food there. It gave me the idea this is essentially what she would do on a daily basis. When I was reading some more information about this, apparently that village has not had this situation occur there ever. Like, apparently, this is the first case where this occurred at that specific area regarding someone being eaten alive by a giant python. But they were still actively warning, like the citizens there were actively warning everyone else that this, according to the quote, this says, "This has not happened before in our village. We have warned everybody to be careful when they walk through the woods, and women should be accompanied by someone at all times." So even with all these warnings and even with these precautions, unfortunately, this is what occurred to this poor woman. So again, she was walking through some kind of woodlands. Somehow, some way, this python was essentially able to creep up on her. Now, the chapter from the book that I just mentioned, I did highlight that there's apparently a technique that pythons do as well, where they curl themselves up on top of trees, and then when they know that a victim is somebody in terms of prey is coming across their area right below them, that's when they drop down on them. Makes me wonder essentially if that's what occurred here, or as is presumed from this article, this python was hidden in some location, and then they were able to strike. They essentially plunged their teeth into her leg and then basically wrapped their entire body, the python's body, around her body. The book I was chronicling as well highlights that whenever that occurs, it's pretty much over. That's because the incredible strength that pythons have when it comes to themselves wrapping around their victim's body, it's all essentially to suffocate them. In fact, bones are usually not even broken. The whole idea is essentially to suffocate them to make sure that they're not breathing. And then when someone lets out a breath, the snake, the python, instinctively wraps themselves even harder. So now the victim, the more that they exhale, the tighter that grip becomes, the less chance that they're able to essentially breathe inwards. And it just becomes a horrible cycle where this person, in this case this poor woman Farida, was someone that was a circumstance of. She was essentially there, and this python was wrapping itself around her, and I would imagine that it was quick. At a certain point, she would have passed away, as terms of the python's grip and her lacking air. And so that's when the next gruesome thing occurred. According to the locals, or actually, let's talk about the husband. The husband's name was someone named Noni. I'm getting now that impression that that is their first names. He was 55 at the time. He stated that she had not returned from home from her usual circumstance. So whenever that occurred, especially there at nighttime, and he hadn't seen her, that's when he started alerting a bunch of the locals around that area. And so they started looking to see what occurred. They tried to wonder, did she get lost? Maybe did she run into some other foul play? But lo and behold, eventually they found a 20-foot long python that was underneath some kind of undergrowth. And this was the following day. But instinctively, what stood out from that is the fact that there was a very, very large bulge within its stomach. In fact, it was just there, just laying about, obviously hidden, but still, how do you hide yourself when you're 20 foot long? And then that's when it was found with that bulge. In fact, the article I was reading stated that whenever python has any kind of food within its stomach, especially a very large source of food, then it can last weeks in that state. It can essentially stay still and then eat whatever is inside it during that time period for weeks on end, and never even has to move because of that situation. So that's essentially what occurred. They added 2 plus 2, realized essentially the horrible circumstance that was happening, and so they ended up killing the snake from to make sure that they could see what was inside it. I don't know how they were able to kill it. The articles didn't state anything. I would imagine that it was probably something where they did something to the head of the snake just to make sure that it wasn't able to survive and then move about afterwards. And then that's when one of them took or actually the husband took one of the machetes from the village and then started slicing the actual skin of the snake. And their worst fears were absolutely confirmed. There, entombed within the snake's stomach, completely covered in slime, was unfortunately Farita. There she was. She was there within the snake. She was swallowed whole. She was actually, based on the location, the way the body was found, she was actually swallowed whole face first. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in the best worst news possible, she was not alive at that point. Again, I don't think so, because the book I was chronicling stated that snakes, giant pythons, and others, they don't start doing that until they know for certain that their prey is dead. But if not, imagine if she was somehow still alive. What an absolutely horrible way to go. Anybody ever seen that movie Anaconda? I'm sure you have. I have as well, the one featuring Jennifer Lopez and John Voight. There's a very memorable, horrifying scene within that movie where essentially John Voight's character gets swallowed alive. So imagine if something like this occurred to poor Farita as well. Swallowed alive head first, just like John Voight's character. Absolutely just horrible, horrible way to go. I cannot think of something worse than something along those lines, at least when it comes to any animal that's out there. But sure enough, when that happened, they found her body there. She was immediately taken away, not to any kind of hospital or anything like that, but just because of the circumstances. She was found dead, like she was right there, dead on the spot. So she was taken away to an area called the Pitu Riawa district of Sidrop Regency, and then there she was given a religious burial to basically send her off, like to end this horrible circumstance. I don't know what happened to the snake afterwards. I would imagine that it was either buried somewhere, or who knows, maybe it was taken somewhere else, maybe to be examined or even for food. Who knows? There wasn't much information associated with that either. The poor husband, though, Nani, the articles that I was reading stated that he was obviously in a horrified state, and he was also in a state where he's almost blaming himself. There's a quote that says, "I am forever sorry that I let my wife go out alone. If I had been with her that day, the snake would not have dared to touch her." And then he ended it by saying, "I feel sorry for the suffering she went through. I feel sorry for our family as well." So pretty much that's that information associated with that situation. This is, again, apparently the first time this occurred there in that area. But in other areas of Indonesia, in fact, the last time it ever even occurred in Indonesia was apparently back in 2022. This was a case of another person, someone named Jarrah, that apparently was out there in a plantation area collecting rubber. This is at a province called Jambi. And then that's when they suddenly found, some of the locals, in other words, suddenly found that he was gone. They were gone. And then, same thing, same circumstance. They ended up finding a giant python stretched out, this time again in some other wooded tree area. And once again, there was a very, very large bulge with regards to what happened to poor Jarrah. So that last time that occurred was 2022, just about 2 years ago. And then apparently the only other time in Indonesia recently that was before that was back in 2018. This was when a mother of two by the name of Watabi, she was 54 at the time, same thing. She ended up going missing there near some vegetable garden on Muna Island. There was a large search by a lot of the local people there. They ended up finding a sandal and then also a machete that she was carrying around. It shows the precautions that she was taking, having that machete, making sure that if anything would creep up on her, they would face that machete as a recourse. But apparently, it wasn't enough. This python, this giant python, was able to entrap her, and then there she was, later found within the belly of this giant python, a bloated belly, obviously dead after those circumstances. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this horrifying story. Imagine that. Imagine being in that situation where you are absolutely no chance of being able to escape from whatever this giant python is doing. And then in the worst case scenario, you're still alive, as essentially it is swallowing you whole. Like there's nothing really worse that I can think of when it comes to something along those lines. But my condolences to the poor woman Farita, to the poor husband as well, Nani, with what occurred. Again, this is the first time that happened within that village. Hopefully, it's the last time as well, as with regards to anybody else falling into a trap from those giant snakes. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. If anybody is from that location as well, maybe you lived there in the past, maybe you've traveled there, let me know. Are there truly those kind of giant pythons out there? Is there enough warning? Are people truly cautious of them because of the situations involving what could occur? Let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.